Hey there, my media friends. This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. I'm going to kick off the Thanksgiving holiday season with a super easy side dish. Herb-filled deviled eggs, of course. While I've got you here, why don't you go ahead and like the video and comment down below what your favorite Thanksgiving dish is. With these deviled eggs, I wanted to encompass what I think Thanksgiving tastes like overall. I hope you agree with me when you try them out. I'm proud to announce that I've added a new addition to the van, 1.5 cup mini food processor. Welcome, little guy. So, when I think about Thanksgiving, I'm usually singing that one Simon & Garfunkel song. Sage, rosemary, and thyme, and parsley somewhere. Starting with the thyme, you can use the leaves from the sprig, but you can also use the soft parts of the stems as well. You'll need about a quarter teaspoon of these. Next up is your rosemary. Now, it's super easy to overpower anything with rosemary, so you'll need no more than a half teaspoon worth of the stuff. Finally, we can add our sage. I just picked a rather small leaf and threw it in there. I tried to process it a little bit, but it proved to be pointless, so let's just carry on. For this recipe, I just went with pre-boiled eggs. This pack came with 6, so I'll end up with 12 deviled eggs. If you need a good reference on how to boil eggs, comment below and I'd be happy to link you to a great video by Chef John of Food Wishes. All we need to do with the eggs is split them and remove the yolks. You can go and throw the yolks into your blender or 1.5 MFP. Once you get them all in there, we can start to thin this out. Typically mayonnaise is used to do this, but I found that I actually prefer a combination of 3 tablespoons of sour cream, and following that up with 2 ounces of cream cheese. The cream cheese adds the richness while the sour cream adds a touch of tang and wetness. You'll need a half teaspoon of salt, and a quarter teaspoon of smoked paprika, which is optional, I just like the flavor. Blend or process this for about 2 to 3 minutes or until you're left with a cooked custard consistency. Looks a bit like this. We could pull our halved egg whites back out along with a Ziploc bag. This one is really strange and squared off at the bottom, so it's a little bit of a struggle for me. Hopefully yours is normal. If so, you can optionally throw in a piping tip into the corner of the bag. If you don't have one, don't worry, it's only for decorating. Fill the bag with your egg mixture. Remove all the air and push the mixture to one side where the tip is. Cut a small corner of the bag, just enough for the tip to poke through. Fill these like so. Feel free to top with more smoked paprika and on a fancy plate with some of our herbs we used. Now, talk about a nice looking plate. Let's give these things a shot. These are light and very fragrant. Like I said earlier, the sour cream keeps it nice and easy on the palate, while the cream cheese just adds a nice smooth texture. Hey there, my meaty friends. This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. I needed a small escape from my ground pork rind heaven for a bit. So, my goal with this recipe was simplicity, value, and flavor, and this achieves it fully. I could think of at least 5 variations on this recipe right off the bat, so feel free to play around with it. Add different seasonings, different wines, and the sort. Anyways, let's finger moonwalk into this piece and get started. Oh yeah, smooth. Let me grab something real quick. I picked chicken thighs because it's high in protein and chicken thighs. It's also just super cheap. Let me grab my travel oven and get that set up real quick. Go ahead and blast this over medium-high heat. I suggest you use cast iron for this one because it's definitely going to help with the crustification of our skins. The chicken skins, not your skins. Remove the grocery store wrapper off your chicken. This pan should really be slightly smoking, but I'm impatient. This one can hold 6 fairly large chicken thighs. Place them skin side down so we can get a real nice sear, Clark. You're going to want to season these up as well. I probably went with about a quarter teaspoon of kosher salt per chicken thigh. It's a little hard to tell, but since I'm going to be cooking these in a seasoned sauce, I'm not too worried about the exact measurements here. You could think a big pinch per thigh and it'll likely be enough. I also went with some black pepper on each one. 5 to 6 twists of some fresh cracked black pepper should be plenty. That's small pinches per chicken thigh for those of you using already ground pepper. Now we do the stand around and wait game. Here are the rules if you want to play this at home. Rule number 1, stand around. Rule number 2, make sure the kitchen isn't on fire. Rule number 3. Rule number 4, wait. If you break rule number 2, you've lost the game. After playing this game for about 5 minutes, my chickies are ready to flip. They should all flip fairly easily. If one is stuck, it's still searing, and that one needs to sit a little longer on the hot surface. Once they're all flipped, sear them on the other side for just a minute, and we need to move them to a plate to work on the sauce. There's a ton of chicken fat here. While that sounds nice, it's going to make for a greasy sauce that'll break later on. Take you a couple paper towels and remove about 85% of the fat. Like all of my recipes, it's highly important that you hit exactly 85% absorption of the fat. Failure to do so will result in breaking rule 2. Next up, grab some white wine. Nothing too fancy, just something drinkable. With your pan off, add in a half cup and begin scraping the bottom of the pan to remove the fond, or the bits that are stuck to the bottom of the pan for those of you who don't know what that is. This is just extra flavor. Your pan should be plenty hot enough if you're using cast iron. After about 30 seconds of scraping, turn your heat to medium and let the rest of the alcohol cook out for about 30 more seconds. Add in 1.5 cups of chicken broth or stock, followed by 1 cup of heavy cream. Bring this to a light boil and reduce it until it's just simmering. Keep an eye on it because it will boil over if you're not careful. Add in a half teaspoon of granulated garlic, mix it in and give it a taste. I added 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt into mine, and then followed it up with about 20 twists of black pepper or about a half teaspoon. Spoon this with all your might and then give it a taste. Adjust as you see fit. You'll know this is thick enough if it coats the back of a spoon. It's finally time to place your chicken thighs back into this creamy slop. When you place them in, keep them skin side up this time. Skin side down will result in a very sad Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. You don't want to make me sad, do you? You'll really make me sad if you don't add in the juices left on the plate. This is the vanilla extract of the chicken. Once it's simmering again, you can turn the heat off and get ready to place it in the oven. Now, I'm fortunate to be able to have an option for 2 ovens. However, this pan weighs like 35 pounds now, so carefully place it in. Cook this at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 176 degrees Celsius for 30 to 35 minutes or until the chicken reaches 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 degrees Celsius at the bone. You want to cook dark meat to a higher temp because it allows for the connective tissue to break down and become more tender. Now, this skin is crispy. So crispy, my first instinct was to touch it. Just listen. Sounds like eggshells. And the sauce looks like sauce. Top this with parsley or chives if you want a nice presentation. I couldn't find chives, so I went with parsley. The chives would have been nicer, but you gotta work with what you got. I'm embarrassed to say that this took me about 6 tries to get 1 piece of chicken out of the pan. But as you see, I did it. Top that with a few spoons of your sauce afterwards. This plate's a bit too big to make showing it off look awesome, but I think it still looks pretty damn good. I'm ready to dig in and take this first bite for my Patreon community. Felt tender to cut, looks deeply caramelized and juicy, and damn, is it good. Rich and creamy, tender and juicy, and a few more adjectives. You can be rich and creamy too if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hey there, my meaty friends. This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. Back during Thanksgiving, I made a cornbread stuffing / dressing, and the beginning step was its cornbread. I just wanted to make a standalone video for it, and I was thinking of doing a roasted jalapeno and cheddar cornbread, but ended up going with a bacon and cheddar, just because it also sounded good. But please feel free to go ahead and try that roasted jalapeno and cheddar cornbread. Obviously, this isn't going to have the flavor of cornbread, but it definitely has the texture, which is just insane to me. Maybe you can add some corn extract for the flavor, but I'll let you make that decision. I had a hard time finding ground chicken, so I had to grind my own. I'm actually not complaining too much about this because I at least know what was in this ground chicken. Just chicken breast. If you're grinding your own, I suggest double grinding it. Whichever you choose, place 1 pound of ground chicken into a pan over medium-high heat and cook until no pink remains. Once done, set aside and pull out a blender cup. I added everything in layers by starting with 2 eggs, then my ground chicken, followed by 2 more eggs, then 6 ounces of ground pork rinds, then 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and finally, the last 2 eggs. This is going to be super thick, so grab a half cup of water or chicken stock to help break this up if needed. You'll probably need at least half of it. Blend until homogeneous on low. I placed my mixture back into my already dirty pan that I cooked my chicken in to mix it up. I added in 4 strips of chopped up bacon and about 1 cup of sharp cheddar cheese. Take your damn dirty mitts and mix this together. Spin as long as it takes, but it'll take at least 3 minutes. Once done, grab a baking dish of some sort. I went with a 9-inch pie pan and then added in 1 tablespoon of ghee, but feel free to use butter. Use your disgusting hands to grease it up and then flop your chick cornbread into this and spread it out. Just make it as even as possible. Place this onto a baking sheet and into an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius for 40 to 50 minutes or until nice and golden brown. It's golden brown thanks to all the bacteria on those dirty hands of yours. JK, it's the oils from the ghee and cheese helping it all caramelize. Let it cool off for about 10 minutes before releasing from your pan and cutting it up. Feel free to keep yours in the pan and cut it up if you want. Either way, take a couple tablespoons of softened salted butter and smear it all over the top, and voila! It's amazing that it has the texture and crumble of cornbread. I'd say the chicken has a lot to do with this, and the pork rinds are just filler. However, I think you still need the pork rinds. If you try this without the pork rinds, comment below to let me know how it went. You can have the texture and crumble of this cornbread too if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here we go again, grinding some pork rinds. Luckily, it's not an absolutely necessary step. You can always just crush them up in the bag, but I was feeling extra and needed to use the food processor anyways. I hope you enjoyed that thumbs up transition. Anyways, let's get to the meat of the video. In your food processor, you're going to want to add in 1 pound of ground chicken. Yeah. Okay. Next up, add in 2 eggs along with about a 1/4 teaspoon of fresh ground nutmeg. You'll want to use fresh just so you can get this awesome cross section. Blend this on low for about 1 minute. Place a gallon Ziploc bag into a cup and scoop in your noodle mixture. Refrigerate this while we prep some prosciutto. Meticulously remove the plastic from your prosciutto and just rip it up completely. We want to give this a nice rough chop. We'll be mixing this in with the cheese sauce and using some for the topping. Speaking of topping, let's get some Parmesan cheese shredded. You'll need about 2 to 3 tablespoons worth of it. Grind over a little more fresh nutmeg and then set this aside. For whatever reason, sharp shredded cheddar and sharp cheddar blocks weren't available at my store, so I had to get slices and shred it myself. Feel free to get a block or some pre-shredded stuff. Or dice it like I'm doing. I don't control your life. Let's quickly make this topping. You'll need 2 tablespoons of pork rinds, all of your Parmesan, a little pinch of your cheddar, a good 1/4 teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika. Give this a toss and set aside. Let's get started on the cheese portion of this mac and cheese now. Set up a double boiler and add in 1 cup of heavy cream, all of your cheddar, half of your prosciutto, and something called creme de brie. We'll need about 2 ounces of it. Again, for whatever reason, my store didn't have any wheels of brie cheese left, but they had this. Turn the heat to medium on your stove and begin to whisk. You can add all of your ingredients at once here because they all come up to temp at the same time, so the cheese shouldn't break. Hopefully, while you've been making that, you've had a pan of water heating over medium-high heat. Take your bag of chicken goo and cut a corner off. What you're going to want to do here is to apply even pressure at the top of the bag, and using a spoon, knife, or fork, cut about 1/2-inch pieces. Once you have half of your batter cut into your water, give it a stir and let it cook for 1 to 2 minutes. Once done, place into a paper towel lined plate and let drain. Repeat until all of your batter has been used. Learning from my last video, we want to get some of the extra water out. Place your chicken noodles onto a lined sheet pan and season with salt. Place this into an oven that's been set to 450 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes. This will help create a better texture later on. Grab your bowl of cheese and dump in your noodles and fold it in. I definitely didn't accidentally make too much cheese sauce. Grab a cooking vessel of choice and place your cheesy chicken noodles into it. Add in the remainder of your creme de brie or brie cheese in dollops around the entire dish. Next, top with your pork rind topping. And finally, scatter the remainder of your chopped up prosciutto. Place this into an oven that's been set to 450 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes or until the prosciutto is crispy. I top mine with an optional sprinkling of chives. This bite right here is for my Patreon subscribers. Thank y'all so much for the support. This next bite is for all of my subscribers. Thank you so much as well. And this outro is for everyone that should be liking and subscribing right now. So I discovered something at Marco's Pizza. Apparently, so did 613 of you as well. How about we make this just a little more carnivore friendly? To start, we need to do some prep. You can absolutely skip this green nonsense if you want, but I personally really like the flavor of parsley that it adds to dishes like this. You'll want about 3 tablespoons of it chopped up finely. Next, we're going to need some Parmesan, but in 2 different forms. First, let's grate about 4 ounces of this extra pungent Parmesan I found at the store. The only reason why I say grate is so that it'll melt easier later when we go to make our Alfredo sauce. The grater side is the scariest side in my opinion. Not many people seem to use it, and it has the sharpest edges. Just mysterious and dangerous, kind of like Marco's Pizza. Now let's take 2 ounces of Parmesan and shred it on the smallest holes of a box grater. This will be for the meatballs. Finally, to finish out the cheeses, let's grate about 1 pound of low moisture mozzarella on the largest holes of the same grater. I've never seen a box grater being used as much as this one has. Alright, it's time for the main event. Grab 1 pound of mild Italian sausage and remove it from the casing. You can always squeeze it out, but that's pretty unsettling. Or you can do what I did and slice the casing to remove it, which is also quite unsettling. Do this for all of them and get them into a mixing bowl. For the balls, we're going to do a 50-50 mix of Italian sausage and ground beef. Add in your beef along with 2 eggs, your shredded Parmesan, about half your parsley, some black pepper, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to get the ground beef into Flavor Town. For the most fun part of this whole process, take your grimy yet obviously sanitized mitts and combine this well. This took me about 4 minutes to finish. You don't have to do this, but I put my bowl of meat on a scale and portioned out 2-ounce meatballs. Here's what 2 ounces looks like with my hand for scale. Repeat the step until your meat has been used up. Place your balls into a pan that's been set over medium-high heat. Cook these for about 2 minutes to get a crust and then flip using a spoon. Once another 2 minutes has been up, place the entire pan into an oven that's been set to 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. While we're waiting on these meatballs to cook, let's make this Alfredo sauce. Add about 1.5 cups of heavy cream to a pan that's set to medium heat. While we wait for this to heat up, add in about a 1/4 teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper. Continuously stir this in order to keep the cream from overflowing. I let mine reduce for about 5 minutes, but it may take yours a little longer. All you need to know is that once it's thickened, turn the heat off and start to slowly add in your grated cheese. Once all of your cheese is added, stir in about a tablespoon of butter. Season this to taste, but the 4 ounces of Parmesan should be more than enough. Once the meatballs are out of the oven, you'll want to drain the grease because we don't need that. Alright, meatballs, done. Sauce, done. Cheese? Yes, like a lot of cheese. I remember when I was eating the Marco's Pizza meatball bake, I said, this is too much cheese, so we have to follow suit. Place this entire pan into your oven at 450 degrees for 15 minutes or until, well, you see it, don't you? If you don't, it's browned and bubbly. How about you take a couple seconds of B-roll to appreciate this? I forgot to hit record for the first meatball. Sorry, I was quite hungry about this point. But here it is, rich and super flavorful. The Italian sausage just works so well with the Alfredo sauce, and I just couldn't be happier with it. I was wondering where all of my cheese went and realized it sunk to the bottom of the pan. The only way to get extra cheese from the bottom is by liking and subscribing. What do you have? Scotch egg? Are you sure? Yeah, I think so. Hey, what's going on? This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef, and in today's video, I bring you Scotch eggs. Apparently, these little flavor bombs are typically used for picnics, which is just a weird thought to fathom. So, how about I show you how to make 3 different versions, according to the meal of the day, of what people in Britain called the least liked food there. How about we get started? The first one up is a breakfast one, and is the most straightforward one here. Lay down some plastic wrap, but enough to be able to fold over later on. Place down your breakfast sausage and begin to press it out. If you'd like, keep a small bowl of water nearby to keep the sausage from sticking to your fingers. Just get it started and then fold your plastic wrap over the patty. Firmly press down with both hands until you get a patty that's about a 1/4 inch thick. Remove the top side of the plastic wrap. This may be a little difficult just because the fat from the sausage is melted onto the plastic. It's okay though, because we can patch it where we need to afterwards. Okay, take your soft boiled egg and place it in the center. This one was boiled for 8 minutes. Check out the tab above to see how I boil my eggs. Pick up one side of your plastic and drape it over the other side. Now, pick up the whole thing and begin gently closing in the seams. Scotch eggs are usually coated in some sort of crumb and deep fried, but I'm not deep frying and I just happen to have some leftover pork rinds, so I decided to coat this one. You don't have to, but it makes it a little more visually appealing in my opinion. It did very little in the way of flavor and texture in the end. The next one is pretty straightforward. Lay down some more plastic wrap and shingle on 3 to 4 slices of prosciutto. I tried really hard to keep the gaps out just in case the egg yolk decided to break through, but looking at it now, I realize the prosciutto isn't a great insulator. As you'll see in a bit, our soft boil won't be so soft for long. Again, fold the plastic wrap over and pick up the whole thing. Do your best to wrap this up and let it hang out seam side down while we did the last one. Okay, for the last one, lay down some more plastic wrap. Okay, I think you understand the concept well enough now. This last one just uses ground beef. Once you flatten it out, lay down some trash cheese and leave about a ½ inch of beef exposed around the whole thing. This one is pretty difficult to wrap, but the outcome is worth it. Just do your best to close all your seams and to patch where you see exposed cheese. I cooked all of these for the same temperature and for the same amount of time. I was very surprised to find that they all cooked at the same rate of speed and with my desired outcome. This rarely happens. So throw this into an oven set to 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes or until everything is browned through. Let them rest for about 10 minutes before slicing into it. Breakfast sausage Scotch egg is looking exactly the way I wanted it. Still runny yolk in the middle and jammy on the outside. The prosciutto wrapped one is a little difficult to slice, so I suggest finding your sharpest knife for that one. Like I said earlier, thin meats don't make the best scintillators. The egg yolk is completely cooked, but it'll still be delicious. The cheeseburger Scotch egg. I can't believe I just said that out loud. This one held up the best and was still super runny. I'm excited for this one.
Oh, yeah.
I went outside to find some scallions in my yard because these definitely needed some color, and I found a huge one with a flower on it and I thought it'd make the plate look even nicer. And there's no need for garnish, but the scallions are definitely complimentary. The breakfast one definitely did its job. It wasn't hard to do considering I used my favorite breakfast sausage. The prosciutto wrap was super delicious and the edges of the prosciutto were crispy, which is really nice. This one is calling for some hollandaise to be poured over it. The cheeseburger one was definitely my favorite. I'm a sucker for trash cheese already, but in this form with the gooey eggs and the tender ground beef, I'll definitely have to make this again.
I wish I had a beef Wellington.
Okay, to start, we will need to make a duck cell. Or at least my version of one. I've personally noticed that things like onions and garlic tend to make me bloat, so I avoid them for the most part. To make this, we will start with 8 ounces of mushrooms, a 1/4 teaspoon of fresh thyme leaves, and a 1/4 teaspoon of coarse kosher salt. Blend this in a food processor or blender until you have a smooth texture. Cook this mixture over medium-high heat until all of the moisture has been evaporated. Set aside and allow to cool completely. Next, we will need to take our tenderloin and prepare it for all the ridiculousness it's about to be encased in. Here, I have one of those pre-seasoned tenderloins in the packaging, but feel free to use fresh if you have it available to you. I had to cut mine down to size to fit the plastic wrap that I have. Dry it off very well so that we get a slight sear on the outside. Sear every side, including the ends. For this so-called puff pastry, I went for a simple mixture of pork rinds and eggs. The ratio I worked out is 1 egg per half cup of pork rind dust. This recipe is 1½ cup pork rind crumbs and 3 whole eggs. The consistency you're looking for is kind of like peanut butter cookie dough. Do not be like me. Use parchment paper instead of the foil that you see here. If you use foil, please oil it very well. For this next step, you can spend as much time or as little time as you want trying to get this to fit on your pan. The goal here is just to get something big enough that will fit over your final product. The biggest thing you should make sure of is that there aren't any holes in it. Put this into a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for 18 minutes or until it is firm to the touch. Let cool until room temperature. Now for the fun part. We will take 3 ounces of thinly sliced prosciutto and lay it flat to almost reach the ends of our plastic wrap. Next, add our cooled duxelle and spread almost to the edges of the prosciutto. You basically want your prosciutto to overlap after wrapping. Finally, add your pork tenderloin. It took me a few minutes to understand how I was going to wrap this thing. It's the first time I'm making a Wellington that isn't individually sized, and the geometry was confusing me. Wrap over one side to the other and carefully pull back the plastic. Tuck your edges and roll the rest of the way like this. It should feel similar to wrapping a burrito. Now, take the time to tightly wrap this whole thing in plastic. Refrigerate this for at least 20 minutes and overnight if you plan on making this the next day. Alright, now for final assembly. Flip your pork pastry to where the rough side is facing down and the smooth side is facing up. Take your tenderloin / prosciutto burrito and lay it on the pan that you plan on cooking on. Take the pork pastry and wrap it tightly around this. The pastry is a lot stronger than you think, so don't be scared to press it in.
Once you have this the way you like it, place it into a 350 degree Fahrenheit oven for 40 to 50 minutes, or until an internal temperature of 155 degrees Fahrenheit has been achieved. Obviously, my thermometer was on some other planet because my internal temperature was a medium well, which I'm fine with. Slice and serve immediately. Now, would I recommend you try this? I mean, of course I would. I'd hope you'd be interested in making any of my recipes, but is it practical? Not really. But is a beef Wellington practical? Anyways, if you try this recipe, I'd love to see some pictures. You can DM me or tag me in your pictures on Instagram at CarnivorousChef. See y'all next time.